Alright, welcome everyone from the DPL. I am Highjumpsean, and I'm going to be covering the best team in the Draft Premier League Season 8, Nature's Madmen. They have signed me on to an exclusive contract as a content creator, so I'm going to be focusing specifically on Nature's Madmen for the entirety of the season. And I just wanted to kind of briefly go over all of their drafts as they have now been all completed, and kind of just give my general impressions. I did help with a lot of these drafts, giving some input and stuff, but I'm primarily going to be looking at kind of the arrangement of the mons and their colors, but maybe I'll throw in some analytical boring mumbo jumbo if I see fit. But yeah, starting off with SP1 for the Nature's Madmen, they got Torn T and made it their this is not a Z user, but it is a Terra user on the visual. But yeah, they started off with Torn T. They got Iron Treads, Galar Slowking, Word and Wash, Hisuian Quillfish, very interesting pick, Mischievous, Terra Carbink, and Baxcalibur. This looks pretty standard to me. This is just like this is very similar to what I used in the TGS. I used Torn T, Iron Treads, Word and Wash as like a pivot core to kind of handle a lot of it was just a good defensive pivot core, and I like that the addition of Galar Slowking kind of ties in very well with Torn and Iron Treads defensively. And the Torn T is Terra, so it's going to be pretty offensive here. The Hisuian Quillfish is a very interesting pick. Not too sure how that mon will do. I know it has some matchups that can do pretty well. But yeah, it'll be very interesting as it's obviously going to be compared to its counterpart Overquill and regular Quillfish, but I think it has pretty unique niche here. Double Poison is very interesting for sure. Carbink's the GOAT. I can't wait to see this thing pop off a terrifying body press set and just solo win. If it doesn't happen, I will be removing myself from the Nature's Madmen server. And then Baxcalibur, pretty strong mon to kind of pair in with all the pivoting they got in here. It's kind of the only semblance of pure breaking power they have, outside of maybe like a Terra Torn if it's like Terra Flying or something. Outside of that, a lot of it's just focused on like chip damage and pivot, but these pivots are pretty solid, and once they get Torn or backs in, something's most likely probably going to be dying here. So pretty interesting. The colors are pretty nice. I think any team with Torn is going to look decent because it actually has a green mon on it. Road and Wash with the blue and the orange is there going to be kind of saving it. If you kind of just look at the first 4 mons here, they're pretty good color wise, but yeah, there's a lot of overlapping color here. It could be a bit disgusting, so we'll just kind of ignore that for now. But yeah, moving on to their second team, SV2 here. Let's see. They have Great Tusk, Meowscarada, Terra Road and Wash, Tinkaton, Dragalge, Mismagius, Greedent, and Terra Thundi T. I actually like this team. It's pretty cool, pretty unique. The start, to me, just seems pretty standard. Great Tusk with a strong offensive grass slash knocker for Tusk, and then you got like a pivot with Road and Wash. The Terra's going to be pretty interesting. I assume that's just because they had leftover budget after Thundi. They just put it on defensively. It could be offensive as well if they want to like Scarf Road and Wash or something. Tinkaton, I think this mon kind of sucks, but I've seen it be used pretty effectively in the DCL, so it'll be interesting to see. I hate its design personally. I don't like this mon, and I think that kind of plays a lot into me thinking this team kind of looks weird just because I don't like Tinkaton. Dragalge's the GOAT. Mismagius, interesting spin blocker here. I wonder how many times they're actually going to use spikes with Meowscarada. I think this mon is just going to attack shit. But I could see them potentially try to play some HO styles with this and just set up Thundi. Yeah. It seems like a lot of at least with the first 2 teams, their power kind of just comes from one mon and then like a second breaker, and then the rest of the team kind of is just going to facilitate. So if a certain mon kind of gets shut down, I'm kind of concerned that they're not going to have a whole lot of nuking power, but I think this team's is gonna do perfectly fine. I've seen Habita, one of the captains, use this type of team structure before. He had like Great Tusk. I believe he had Meowscarada, Rotom Wash, and then like Terra Iron Moth. But in this case, he's got Thundy, which I think is a better mon, in my opinion. But yeah. Color-wise, again, what's with all these purples and pinks that are coming in? I mean, we had blue here, kind of dull colors. I think, again, Rotom Wash and the green type Pokemon is kind of saving the draft, but nothing's kind of standing out to me, like, color-wise. I think I prefer this one to this team, but it's kind of close. They're kind of even to me. But yeah, they're SV3. Okay, color-wise, I don't like this team, but I'm just going to get over it. Terra Latios, Zapdos, Scizor, Diancie, Terra Donphan, Arbok, Alomomola, and Weavile. Now, this team, unfortunately, I'm a huge Roaring Moon hater, but Haba cooked up some heat Roaring Moon draft with this, and I actually really liked it for once, but for some reason, all the Roaring Moons kept going early. Everyone else is crazy, apparently. And I think Weavile's pretty cool. It's a pretty unexplored mon after getting its tools from Sword and Shield back, but it's basically Sword and Shield Weavile in a very offensive meta, so I think it's going to do perfectly fine, given how oppressive Dark Ice combination is. So it's Chien-Pao Light. Interesting to see how they'll use it, but Latios, obviously, Zapdos, Scizor. I kind of like the Terra Latios. I think this mon's been kind of slept on in comparison to its Latios counterpart, but I'm interested to see how they'll use it as well. It's a pretty strong breaker, and I don't think a lot of teams are as well equipped as they think for this mon. Zapdos and Scizor are obviously going to be able to pivot. I would argue Diancie could do the same, but they banned Baton Pass still in DPL. Come on, guys. The DCL freed it. It's time to free it for you guys as well. Mola has Flip Turn now, so it's not as passive. And I think Healing Wish is a cool option to give Latios more chances. But I like the pivoting and the kind of just the strong breaking options on this team. I think the Arbok is still just a cope poison type. But it does have Glare, so there's some interesting options as well. T-Spikes this generation. Donphan with Scizor is going to be the removal. Donphan being Terra is pretty cool. I think they were debating between Mola and Donphan, but I think Donphan obviously has more offensive capabilities compared to Mola, so I can understand why they wanted to put it on it. And I think in some niche matchups, Haba does like to utilize more defensive Terras, or at least have the option between two Terra captains to have the option mid-game to kind of just fluctuate. But yeah, I think the colors suck. If there was green on this, it would be a lot better. Maybe some orange, but I think we got a little bit of all the green and orange with Torn, Rotom, and Meowscarada, so they kind of had to give that away a little bit here. Yeah, let's move on to their SV4. I actually like the colors on this team the most out of the SV teams. I think SV1 was part of the second, this was third, and this was fourth. This is probably the best. I think it has the best kind of blue, this kind of like dark light mixture of blue here. Rotom Wash's blue is a little too light, and all these are kind of dull. But yeah, they have Torn T, non-Terra. So they have two Torn Ts. Pretty Haba standard there, but they have Terra Raging Bolt, which is so good. I love this mon, especially with how defensive you can make it and not have to invest in its special attack. I think this mon's really cool, and I kind of like how they surrounded it with Samurott, with spikes. Obviously, I've seen this core before, and then I've seen this exact three actually before with Great Tusk. Don't know how Great Tusk got on that team, but instead it's Iron Treads, round 4. Still a very good roll compression mon. And then after that, it's kind of just the top 4 plus friends. Obviously, Terra Braviary is pretty good, and I think they'll be able to make great use of that still. Arbok, again, is on here. The Coper returns. And then they got Sableye, which is pretty nice. Screen's going to be pretty decent. Kind of setting up Raging Bolt. I'm kind of interested to see how reliant they're going to be on, like, as a win con on Raging Bolt, given that Torn kind of acts as a pivot, Treads acts as like a defensive utility mon. It's their only rocker outside of their Duraludon, which you see at the end there. And then Samurai is obviously going to be able to spikes pretty easily. And speaking of Duraludon, I remember in the early stages, we saw that Duraludon wasn't on the dock, and we're like, that's a free 1-pointer that they can just slap onto the team. But obviously DPL fraudulently caught it and raised it to 6 points. Still didn't stop them, as they ended up getting 1 Duraludon out of compensation for the loss that we had. Don't mind me, I'm eating some jambalaya on the side. But yeah, I like this team's colors. I think it's not my favorite in terms of like the competitive side. I think my favorite team... I'm most intrigued about this Weavile Latios team, but yeah, these are pretty cool. I think I like this team as well. I think Vax is really strong mon. But I'm very curious to see how they're going to make use of this Raging Bolt team. Because I can see this kind of getting overwhelmed or not doing enough quick enough, and that could be a bit concerning, but they're obviously the Braviary Masters, so we'll see fit. But yeah, color-wise, are my favorite team. Favorite team overall with colors and competitive integrated, definitely the Vax Teratorn team. All right, let's move on to Sword and Shield. These have some pretty cool mons here. So Sword and Shield 1 has Zera, Celesteela, Slowking, Volcarona, Eldegoss, Persian Alola, Nihilego, and Piloswine. Now this is a very interesting team. I think it suffered from a lot of interesting routes, and it was kind of hard to narrow down. Compared to the other Sword and Shield team, I think that was a little more clear cut for them. But Zeracelli, the Hungry Man staple, coming back. Nick loves his Zera Celesteela, so especially Celesteela. I don't know why this dude loves that mon. Go Melmetal, Team Melmetal. But yeah, they got Celesteela. But they decided to pair it with double Meteor Beam with Nihilego, which is pretty fire. I love Nihilego. I think that mon's just altogether saves this draft and makes it so much more drippy. Volcarona is pretty interesting. I've been a pretty big Volcarona proponent. It's just obviously there are pretty strong counters to it, namely in Dragonite. There's been a lot of Dragonites. Luckily, there's only 2 total out of the 14 other teams that they could play. So it's not too bad of odds. So I think Volcarona actually has pretty good matchups across the board from what I remember. So it'd be pretty interesting. But yeah, I like the routes this team can go. Good amount of pivots between Slowking, Persian. I mean, Volcarona can pivot as well. And then obviously the GOAT Piloswine, kind of there to kind of check a lot of those. Well, mainly the main threat of the tier, which is Garchomp. Outside of Eldegoss and Slowking, Celesteela, Piloswine, and Persian are going to be able to annoy the hell out of that mon. So not sure Garchomps can be too big of an issue. Now opposing mons like I don't even know. I don't even think Coco would have to be like physical or mixed of some kind. I think it's going to struggle a little bit versus like Eldegoss, Nihilego, and Piloswine, Zera. Opposing Zera could be annoying if it gets like a bulk up, but I think generally they're going to be okay. It's a pretty interesting team. Not really something I've seen before in combo, but I'm interested to see how it'll go. I believe they were going to have Nidoking on this team before, and then they said Nihilego and Piloswine, and I think Nidoking is a bit of a fraud, so I very much like this offensive type of route instead. Yeah, Sword and Shield 2, they have pretty standard teams, kind of like based off of that DCL team from ZFG. Obviously, I think just Lando with Slowbro Melmetal is just a strong core in general. I love Melmetal with Slowbro, and Slowbro is a Habita staple, and you happen to get both slow twins in this tier, so he's definitely loving that. And then Landorus is obviously just the GOAT, except in Gen 9 where he's a fraud. But yeah, standard top 3. Blaze was added onto this team. I know ZFG had that as well. Blaze is just an absolute monster. With the era of Spectra over, I expect Blacephalon to kind of just dominate as the next best, you know, special attacker that kind of just piles on teams. So, and with Spectra gone, not a lot of teams are going to be drafting normals. Not like a normal type is really going to stop Blacephalon anyways. So I'm intrigued to see how those teams go. I think one Snorlax was drafted, so Snorlax is going to be, you know, decent into the Blacephalon matchup. But yeah, it has Melmetal to deal with, and that mon is just going to obliterate any type of Snorlax. And then you got Diancie, obviously just that nice utility mon. Dark Resist especially as well. I think like a Hydreigon could be pretty annoying for this team otherwise. You got Eldegoss, another Eldegoss, so both Eldegosses that could be drafted were drafted by the Madmen. And then they got Dragalge. Obviously I think they got Dragalge in SV2. And then a Zelf. Now, this team I think is my favorite of the Sword and Shield teams, just because I love Blacephalon and Melmetal. But this team loses so much drip with this Azelf pick. Now, there was another mon that could have been drafted here, and it would have been so much better, so much cooler, and this team would have been, probably would have been the clear best team. It's obviously still my favorite team of all the Sword and Shield teams drafted. No bias, obviously, but I think it would have been undisputable if Alakazam was on this team over Azelf. Now, I think Azelf was the better pick, but it doesn't mean that it was the best pick for the fans. And I think Alakazam, with no Spectre, obviously Weavile exists, but I don't think Weavile's doing anything to Melmetal, and sometimes even Slowbro. I think Azelf would have been, not Azelf, I think Alakazam would have been absolutely dominant in this tier, and absolutely the GOAT. Everyone has to prep for the stupid Focus Sash set, but then obviously you can just bring the Life Orb set and just absolutely nuke on people. Kind of disappointed that the Madmen went this route, but obviously Habita is a basic ass bitch who wants to win, so obviously he went with the Azelf route, but just saying, he could have won with style, but he decided to be less trippy about it. All I'm going to say about that Azelf pick. But yeah, moving on to USUM, probably my least favorite of their drafts, to be honest, not going to lie. They got Mega Diancie, Kyurem Black with Z, Crocodile, Z Crobat, Starmie, Steelix, Rotom Heat, and Muck. Now, I think this team didn't really have a lot of good routes after the first two. I kind of wish they went the Zygarde route instead of Kyurem Black, but you can tell the right influence when the Kyurem Black was chosen over the Zygarde. But, you know, they kind of rebounded the best they can. They got Crocodile, which is a really solid mon overall. I love this mon in this tier. Crobat, kind of a bit of a cope pick as a flyer here. I believe they got sniped on something. So Crobat's here, but I think Crobat with Z, it could be pretty decent as well. Overall, Starmie, good. With tandem with Crobat, Defog, Spin Starmie is going to be able, and obviously Magic Bounce, duh. It's going to be able to support Kyurem Black, which is, you know, one of the dominant breakers of this tier. They got Steelix, so double ground. Obviously they needed that because Crocodile gets folded by Zera and Coco unless it's Scarfed, and Steelix obviously offers a Coco pivot at the very least. And then they got Rotom Heat and Muck. Rotom Heat, I believe they just wanted a flying resist / pivot to get shit in. Rotom Heat's there. I think this mon could be fraudulent, but I'm interested to see how it'll do. I haven't seen a lot of Rotom Heats, at least not for a very long time, so I'm curious to see how they use that as well. And then Muck, not sure why they got Muck. I guess they just wanted the grounded poison. I guess because that could be annoying to have to constantly go into Crobat or Starmie and remove it. So they got Muck, and I think Muck would be somewhat similar to Alolan Muck. Just obviously doesn't have knockoff like in Gen 9. So we'll see how they make use of that. Overall, not sure how I feel about this team. I think it can function well. This looks like a very ride type of team, so if he does opt to play in the tier, I could see him potentially using this. I know Sky Penguin or Skype, he said that he'd be able to use either of these teams, so I think he'll be fine piloting if he plays in this tier as well. I don't know who else would play in this tier, to be honest. But yeah, USUM 2. Pretty strong core. Obviously, the pretty strong offensive core people have been using, the Koko, Kartana, Mega Charizard X. Just all pretty strong mons in this tier. This point, just don't absolutely fumble the ending. And I think they did all right. I mean, they got Mesprit and Steelix. I think double Steel helps because relying on Kartana is like honestly pretty fraudulent. They got Healing Wish as well to kind of support any of the top 3 if need be. And after that, they got Blastoise, Alolan Muck, and Crustle. I think they were debating Starmie at first, but then they had Starmie on this draft, so I'm pretty sure they didn't want double Starmie. So they went with Blastoise, and obviously Alolan Muck here. Now, ground types could be annoying. Don't remember how many Zygardes were drafted, if at all, but at least one. At least I know of one. But yeah, Zygarde would be pretty scary into this team. But at least Blastoise can semi-take a hit, and then Roar, Ice Beam or something. Crustle, I don't know. That guy might be a fraud here, but he gets a bunch of hazards, so maybe that's why they want to bring him. Some like Sash, well, not Sash, like a sturdy lead with Crustle with like Custap Berry could be semi-useful in some matchups. They're going for more of a HO route, and then Muck. I don't know. I think I've seen Muck be useful in some matchups on some team structures, but not sure here how it'll do. It's hard for me to see. I'm retired, so my analysis is going to be subpar at this point. But I think Muck could be decent. It's a decent pursuit trapper as well for some Terramons like Latios. Or like even the Necrozma, for example, it kind of forces it to run ground coverage, which is obviously going to come versus this team anyways. So yeah, Mesprit Muck core is pretty good. I've seen that in combination. So probably definitely my favorite of the 2 USUM teams, but I don't know. The tier I'm least excited about, and I think that's just kind of how USUM is. Sometimes it ends up into some grody drafts. This is why I kind of stay away from this tier. It doesn't look as interesting to me. But yeah, why don't we move on to the last teams, which are ORAS. So Rai kind of engineered a lot of these teams, and I gave a decent amount of input here, but he tried to recreate our Wings team with Torrentee, Klefki, Hydreigon, Mega Metachan, Zoomerl, and then he ended up swapping out Gigalith, Misdreavus, and Nidoqueen, and he picked up Swampert, Roselia, and Ampharos instead. I really liked that Wings team. I definitely felt like there were ways you could improve upon it, given some of the matchups we struggled against. And I think one of those matchups we did struggle against was, in a way, kind of Run and Wash, but Mega Charizard X. Even though we had like a Zoomerl and Gigalith, that Mon, it could just chip things down and kind of just run through our team regardless. And so Ryan ended up getting a different Flying Resist and Ampharos instead of Gigalith, and then he kept the Azumarill, but he upgraded it into the Nidoqueen Gigalith slot into a Swampert. More reliable rocks in that way. And this one in tandem with the Azumarill is going to be a lot better to like that Mega Charizard X matchup, which is probably one of the stronger mons in this tier. And it obviously helps a lot versus things like Garchomp as well. And then I obviously got Roselia. Helps in that Keldeo matchup along with the Azumarill, as well with Torn. So I think this team is pretty good. I think I like both ORAS teams equally, as we'll get to the other one. Mainly because the other one looks pretty cool as a interesting mon on it as well. But yeah, I really love the colors of this team. I think that was the issue with the USUM teams, is they were really ugly to me, and I think that kind of played into me not vibing with them. And then the Sword and Shield teams were kind of like that. This team's alright. These colors are pretty dull, outside of like the pretty bright colors in Volk and Zera and stuff. But yeah, this team is by far the best colors all around. Just pretty strong blues. Double green is pretty interesting. There's no like oppressive red, but there's red littered throughout, and I think that's honestly good enough for me personally. I think an overbearing amount of red can be a little too aggressive, which is the problem with this team. You know, the Weavile Scizor is kind of a little too much red there going on. As a blue stand, obviously Swampert and Azumarill are going to be a lot better here. But yeah, moving into the last ORAS team. They're ORAS 2. We got Mew, Infernape, Weavile, Skarmory, Nidoqueen. So I got the Nidoqueen here. Mega Sceptile, Lantern, and Trevenant. So this is actually a rendition of Trick of Eye's Season 5 ORAS team that Youngster Bill used predominantly to win Season 5, as well as to win ORAS MVP. The start was very similar. They got Mew, Infernape, Weavile, Skarmory. And then from there, I think they obviously got the Lantern as well that was on that team. But instead of going for no ground like Trick of Eye did and the Mega Altaria, Rai opted to go with the Mega Sceptile Nidoqueen route. Actually, I like this a lot. I think Mega Sceptile is pretty underrated and it was pretty low in value as well, given how fast that mon is. And I think the defensive core between Mew, Skarm, Lantern, and even Infernape in some matchups, I think that's already solid enough. And he kind of just patched up, adding an extra ground type, another electric immunity with Nidoqueen. That way he didn't have to like cope with like Vileplume and like no ground type. Now I do think a mon like Charizard X could absolutely dent this team if it boosts up too much, but obviously you could use something like Scarf Infernape, like a helmet sacrificial Nidoqueen or something. I mean, unless you want it to take damage, you probably don't want to use helmet mons weak to Earthquake between Nidoqueen and Lantern. So I'm curious to see how they'll play around those matchups. And obviously, if they only play one ORAS, they're going to have to choose between these two anyways. And then Trevenant is the last one. I think he was debating whether or not to get like, I don't know, some other ghost type. I think like Drifblim or something. But he ended up going Trevenant, have an extra kind of response for Keldeo, because the team kind of would have had to rely on like Lantern and Mew. And so kind of gives them ways to work around both stabs a little bit easier. And yeah, I'm not sure if this mon learns Sneak. We had this last season on DPL when Ryan and I were on the same team. I thought this mon was pretty cool, honestly. I think it has a lot of interesting sets with Harvest and Frisk. Yeah, I don't know how often they'll have to bring it. It is a spin blocker as well for Skarm. But yeah, I think I still prefer this team just because of the colors overall. It's probably my favorite team in the entire set of drafts, just based off colors alone. And yeah, I think structure-wise, I think I like this team as well. It could be a bit slow comparatively. It doesn't have anything over 100 outside of Torn, but I don't think that's too big of an issue based off my experience helping with this team on Wings when it was basically the same team. And this team is insanely fast, so it's kind of a dichotomy there. But yeah, these are the Madmen drafts. Now, if I were to choose my top 3, this is definitely my favorite. This is number 1. And This one's probably my number 2, this Sword and Shield team. Obviously would have been number 1 if Alakazam was on the draft. That's the main thing holding this back. And then probably this Baxcalibur team. I very much like this Baxcalibur team with Terratorn and Slowking, Iron Treads, Rotom Wash. And Terra Carbink, obviously the carry of this team. But yeah. I'll be back throughout the season doing whatever. I don't know. I've signed the exclusive contract with Madmen, remember, so I'll do whatever Captain Hobbit and Blitz say for content. But yeah, maybe I'll give updates during the week about, you know, my favorite games from the Madmen. I'm not gonna really cover other teams as they didn't give me money to promote them. So yeah, I'm gonna finish my jambalaya, and we'll catch you guys maybe in the future. Peace.